I chose to do my research project on the math intervention program at my school, which is Lakeland Elementary School. Lakeland Elementary is located in Coldwater, Michigan. It's a very rural area, mainly made up of small factories and farmers. The school is actually located about 5 miles south of the town. The population of Coldwater is 10,811, and that was in the census of 2014. 85% of adults in Coldwater have a high school, are high school graduates, and only about 13 of the adults in Coldwater have a bachelor's degree or higher. And this indicates that possibly a value in education could be a problem in this area just because of the higher education percentage of the area. This is a look at some of the demographics about Lakeland. It's entirely a 4th and 5th grade building. There are 2 other elementary schools which are both located in town. Before 2013, all of the schools were area schools, so they were all K-5, and then we grade leveled buildings to integrate PLCs and encourage grade level teams. There's about 407 students at Lakeland, pretty well evenly distributed between 4th and 5th grade. There's a 21.2 student to teacher ratio. We have been a school-wide Title I school for the last 3 years. We also received a focus school designation in 2013. However, this March we were removed from that list. So this indicates that we have students that are struggling in both reading and math for several years. However, the removal from the list has shown that we have been making improvements. We also have an issue with chronic absenteeism. We have between 31 and 25% of our students in the last 3 years who are chronically absent. This is also an indicator of the value of education of the area. We've also been having a big increase in our English language learner population. The 2 languages that are the most predominant are Arabic and Spanish. This is some perceptions data that was collected. Value of math and school seems to be an area of focus. There's an increasing dislike of math from 51% to 38% of students. There was also an increasing number of students who dislike coming to school from 51% to 29% of students. Differentiating instruction seemed to be an area of focus on the teachers' perception survey. 43% of the teachers thought that they personalize instruction based on the needs of every student in their classroom. 34% of teachers used a variety of technologies as instructional resources to help with that differentiation. And 53% of teachers think that the learning support services are provided for all students based on their individual needs. The perception of the teachers in the building is a good view of how many teachers are actually differentiating based on the needs of their students that they're teaching. However, though teachers think they're not, the parents seem to believe that their children are receiving a high-quality education and that all the teachers are supporting all of the needs for their child. So based on all of that data that was looked at, some possible areas of need were poverty, the value of education in the area, attendance, reading, math, English language acquisition, and differentiation. I chose to focus on differentiation for this research project, mainly in the area of intervention because I teach intervention, because it seems to address all of these areas instead of just focusing on just one. So at Lakeland, we have intervention blocks. There's a half an hour for reading intervention every day, and there's a half an hour for math intervention every day in every teacher's schedule. In that half an hour, there are 4 classrooms, and students are grouped based on either their reading level or some type of method for grouping and math ability, and then they are instructed in their smaller groups in the area that they are needed. So there's a high above benchmark room where the higher students are challenged and pushed to do deeper level thinking problems and apply their knowledge. And then all the way down to we have small group intervention where there's 6 kids to each teacher and really focusing on that student's individual needs. For reading intervention, we've been very consistent and always use the Fountas and Pinnell reading levels to group students. However, we've used several different methods for grouping students for math, and there has been little consistency in the instruction that's happening and then how we're teaching or how we're splitting up kids. So I really wanted to look at data to see which of these areas and methods was the most effective for our half an hour intervention block. So some variations that have been used, we've used NWA RIT scores and then used the Descartes learning continuum that's given through NWA. We've also used teacher-created formative assessments on the essential standards that were picked out by teachers. And then we've also used math recovery screener scores, which is a benchmark assessment that's given throughout the district. The data hasn't ever been looked at to see what was the most effective method for grouping these students for math or the instruction. So that's the initiative behind this research. So these are the variations that have been used by the 4th grade. So from September 2013 to June 2014 and September 2014 to December 2014, students were grouped on their total math recovery screener score, and then the intervention was based on a monthly math recovery topic. So one month was all about structuring numbers, another month was addition and subtraction, another month was all multiplication, another month was all division, and it was using math recovery type of instructional strategies to be able to teach these topics. And then from February 2015 to June 2015, students were grouped on their RIT scores on the NWA assessment, and then the instruction in the rooms was based on the Descartes continuum of learning. Teachers looked at the range of the RIT scores of the students that were in their room for intervention and then taught towards the topics that are in the continuum for that specific RIT range. And then from September 2015 to December 2015, the students were grouped based on their understanding of math recovery topics on the screener. Students were placed in groups based on their lowest area of need. So students who didn't have number ID yet were placed in a room where they focused on number ID. Students who then couldn't structure numbers were put in a room where it was only focusing on structuring numbers. Students who needed to focus on place value and using that in addition and subtraction were then placed in another room, and so on and so forth. And then the rooms and topics changed as the students were mastering previous topics. So it was really flexible in the grouping of students and what the teachers were teaching within each room. These are the variations that 5th grade have used so far. From September 2013 to June 2014, students were grouped on their total math recovery screener score, and the instruction was based on the monthly math recovery topics. This was the same as 4th grade at the same time. And then in September 2014 to June 2015, the 5th grade teachers decided to group their students based on scores on the teacher-created formative assessments that were on the essential standards that the teachers chose. These standards are the standards we report out on our standard-based report card. We focused on 3 standards during the year. We focused on multiplication, division, and fractions. Students then with the lowest 20 students, I guess, on the math screener received intervention with math recovery topics by the interventionist. And then in September 2015 to December 2015, the 5th grade decided to use NWA RIT scores to sort students, and then they also used the math screener scores as a second data piece. So they scored it first by NWA scores, and then within the grade level ranges of NWA, the RIT, the groups, they then sorted by screener scores, and the lowest 12 students in both of those the NWA score and the screener score were placed with the interventionist. The instruction was focused on the Descartes continuum of learning based on the RIT score range in each classroom. The process I went through for collecting the data was I started with the child study sheets that we use. They color code the students who are proficient or above grade level as green, those who are a year or less below grade level is yellow, and those who are more than a year below grade level is red. Teachers enter in all the benchmark assessments that we use in the fall, winter, and spring for all of their students in their class, and this helps us to pinpoint students who may be in need of a more significant intervention. We do this also with behavior and attendance levels. I then found the total number of students in the different teacher groups who were either at grade level, a year or less below grade level, or more than a year below grade level at the different testing periods. This is an example of a child study sheet, so I've removed student names, but there would be student names there. And so it gives the Fountas and Pinnell levels, it gives the NWA levels in the 3 different areas. We do reading, language, and math. It also gives the math recovery screener scores, and then also attendance and behavior. So this is just a good picture of how we could use this. Students that have a lot of red are needing interventions in multiple areas instead of just one. The data collection process continued. I then made a table with the different setups of the intervention, along with if the number of students at that grade level, a year less grade level, or more than a year below grade level increased or decreased. I then colored the cells to green if it was a good change. So for example, if the number of students that were proficient or above increased, I would color it green because that's a good change. And then if that number decreased, that would be a bad change, so I would color it red. And then yellow if it was neutral. This mainly happened with the students who were a year or less below grade level, because sometimes the students who were more than a year below grade level increased, but the students who were or decreased, and then the students who were above grade level either increased or decreased, and then it kind of made it neutral because those kids could have decreased in that category or they could have increased in that category, and it's hard to say. So they were just a neutral yellow color. And then I was able to compare the different setups of the intervention block for those that had the most success with all of the students. So this is one of the charts. This was for the power standards, and the teacher created formative assessments. And so I aligned the dates and the topics and how the kids were grouped based on the different categories of kids and if they could score proficient or not on the screener and on the NWA. I then color coded like I talked about earlier. Then I counted up the areas that were improved of the total in this area was 4 areas of improvement. There was 5 areas that were neutral, and there was 3 areas that declined. And then I calculated a percentage because not all of the different setups have been done for the same amount of time. So that way I could see the percentage of the time that the improvements were good. This is the chart for the NWA scores and using the Descartes continuum for the instruction. This also had 5 areas of good improvement. There was 2 neutral areas, and then there was also 5 areas of decline. So it's pretty evenly distributed whether students are going to decline or if they're going to improve based on this type of grouping. I did find it interesting that from September 2015 to December 2015, all of the NWA was a decline, and compared to all of the screeners were a good improvement. So I found that really interesting because both the tests were so dramatically different from each other. And then this was the intervention that was based on math recovery. We have had more experience with this because we went through math recovery training as a district. And so this was our strategy of choice during those years. So while we were learning the topics and how math recovery works, we were also using it in our classrooms. There was 18 areas of improvement when using math recovery, 3 neutral areas and 3 areas of decline. So there was a 75% chance of it being good improvement when using math recovery to focus our instruction into group needs. So some conclusions that I made from this was at this point in time, math recovery seems to be the most effective way of running the math intervention at Lakeland Elementary. Some suggestions for improvements based on an article I read from What Works Clearinghouse is that it was suggested to look at data from the M-STEP as an additional screener for students who may need intervention. And I thought this was a really good idea because we do put a lot of time into the M-STEP in our state assessments. It only makes sense to use that data for more than just if our school's improving or not. It makes sense to be able to pinpoint students who may need some intervention in different areas. It was also suggested in What Works Clearinghouse to use a screener that aligns with other schools in the district and what they're doing, so that way you can compare your results with them. And then also, as they're transferring buildings, it's easier to have some knowledge base on the kids that are coming into your school building before they actually get there. We do have the screener, which is used, the math recovery screener, which is used district-wide. However, we don't really talk between schools on how they're using that data and if they're using it for intervention or not. So that vertical alignment piece really needs to be put in place within our district to be able to be consistent in what we're using and how we're using it. And these are the references that I used while completing the research.